Welcome to Daily Armor. Today I'm going to be in Isaiah chapter 58. I'm going to be looking at verse number 12. Isaiah 58 and verse number 12, and it says, "And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations. And thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the paths to dwell in." I just want to start today's devotion, just a quick one on that very first part, and then maybe, Lord willing, the next devotion we'll get into a little bit more of this verse. But that very first part where it says, "And they that shall be of thee, they that shall be of thee, shall build the old waste places." Just that first part is where we're going to start with today. I just cannot get it off my mind. I've been pondering on this for several days. I think about those that made such a difference and an impact in my life and who I am today and things that I do. And it's not actually always about, the people that you were, born into a certain family, but it's the people that the Lord has put in your path that has helped shape you. And yes, the people that you were born into, that's kind of your beginning, but it doesn't just end with your family. Like what your family name is, isn't always going to reflect who you are, and that can be in a good way or a bad way, either one. So you are your own person, and God has developed me, and He's developed you, and He's used the people that He's put in our path to help do that. And those people that we look back and see how they've made such a difference. And I look at my husband's life, and I see my pastor from my home church, who's now with the Lord, but I see Preacher Lockie in his life that made a tremendous impact in his life. And when I read this, verse number 12, when it says, "And they that shall be of thee," I think of Preacher Lockie, that of him, my husband is molded and shaped, and God has developed him a lot through the teaching and the preaching and the example of Preacher Lockie, and made a tremendous impact in his life, made a tremendous impact in my life. Look at the people that God has put in my path. When Todd was first preaching, and it wasn't very long before he was pastoring. I mean, it was a few months. I mean, by a few months, he was called to preach in May, and by January 1st, he was pastoring Laurel Hill Baptist Church. And as I never dreamed in a million years of ever being a preacher's wife, much less a pastor's wife, and had no clue what that would involve, God knew how to put people in my life that made an impact, and I'm a product of all these people that God's put in my life. And as I think about looking back at the people that's been instrumental in my life, which would be Preacher James Lockie, which would be Miss Mary Ellington, who just recently went home to be with the Lord, and just realizing the impact that they made in my life, I was thinking about Miss Mary, and the fact that I ever sing a special in church is because she heard, saw, felt led of the Lord, whatever the case may be, but she impacted my life and told me, you need to ask the Lord for a song, because you've got a song to sing, you need to sing, and you can sing. And I'm like, "Miss Mary, I can't sing. I can't do that." But she saw something different, and whether it was instrumental that the Lord just caused her to see that, something that I didn't see, and I would never would have dawned on me. I mean, it just would never have even dawned on me, because I've never had any, the opposite. Always discouraged. More people discouraged me from doing anything remotely like that than I ever had to encourage me to do anything like that. Yet she did, and then I considered it, and then one day And I asked the Lord, I'm like, Lord, if you want me to sing, you'll have to give me a song. And I mean, I just didn't think there was one out there that I was even capable of singing. And yet one day I was standing in my kitchen listening to gospel radio on the TV, whichever station that I was listening to that particular day. And I heard a song, and I knew, and that song spoke to me to the point where I knew I had to sing it. I knew I had to, and then I was like, well, I don't know how to. I don't even know how you go about this, and then I remembered that getting some accompaniments at the Bible bookstore for the people that sung at Todd and my wedding, and I thought, well, Lord, if you want me to sing this, then maybe it'll be up here. And I went up there thinking it's not going to be here, and I won't have to worry about this. I won't have to stress over this because I'm not going to find any music for it. It's not going to be able to happen. And went up there, and lo and behold, I found exactly the exact song, and it had several keys. The accompaniments came in several different keys, and then I had the task of taking on the responsibility of what God would have me do. But that first little inkling came through God using Mary Ellington. And that turned into, it took me months of practicing. It took me months of, and the nerves on that first time that I sung it. I was quivering. My voice was quivering. But I sang the song that I knew I was supposed to sing, that I knew the Lord put together, and I was obedient. And then pretty soon, I've got another song that I feel like that I could do that really tells my story, and it's speaking to what I was going through at the time. And then in the middle of all of it, then the boys take up guitar lessons, and then they're like, well, sing this one and sing that one. And then that's what we started doing as a family. And then I realized that the people that God put in my life and impacted my life, He put somebody in Todd and the kids' life that taught them to play guitar, and how God used all these people, Bryant Bishop and Mary Ellington and James Lockie and all these people, and my best friend Donna, and just so many people that made such a tremendous impact in my life. And then I think about the people that I'm in their life, and beginning with my children, and then all these people that God has allowed me to be a part of their life. And I think that I might be that for somebody else, and that is a heavy burden. But you are impacting somebody else's life, whether it's for good, whether it's for evil. That's what you have to think about, that you are being an example, whether it's a good example or a bad example. You and I are being an example that others are paying attention to, and we have the opportunity to encourage and to see something in somebody else's life and try to bring that out and encourage them. And God has such a way of putting us all together and working all those things out so that we can be in His will and part of His plan, and be productive in our walk with the Lord. And as I read this, and I've just been pondering over my husband being so majorly impacted by Pastor James Lockie, and I think that he is a pastor to so many now, and they look to him. And as I think about that young man who preached Wednesday night, and how he was speaking about how his pastor makes such an impact in his life, and I realized that Pastor Todd Harold is a Pastor James Lockie to somebody else. And what a tremendous responsibility, and what a tremendous honor and privilege for God to do that. And it's not something that we can do, that it's not something that He conjured up and can do, but it's something that only God knows how to put together. And as I read this again, and it says, and they that shall be of thee. And I immediately think of my children. They are of me. They come out of my womb, God gave them to me for a short time, only for a short time. But they passed through my body, and they were, my responsibility for 18, 20, years. And man, what a huge responsibility. And I didn't always get it right. I messed it up plenty of times. But God knows how to put other people in their life and to mold them and shape them and bring them where they need to be. And he says, and they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Man, to think about that, people that have impacted me has caused so much of the way of what I do today, and then that how I impact somebody else can change what they do in days to come and months and years to come, and even to take those old waste places. You think about that. They shall build the old waste places. That's those areas that are not being used anymore. They're ruined, and they need to be restored. They need to be brought back to life. Maybe there's some buildings that are not getting used. Maybe there's some resources that are not getting used because the timing is, that time is past. But somebody that we've made an impact to, they're going to look back and they're going to say, hey, I remember when we used to be involved in that, or that used to be used, and that would make, we could use that in the ministry that the Lord's given us to do. But the impact can be so much about what you're doing in someone else's life, and because of what God used somebody else in your life, and he is molding us and shaping us, and he's using people, weaving them all throughout our life, and weaving us into somebody else's life. I was crocheting yesterday, and I had a sheen of yarn that I had used up, and then I'm just learning. I'm very, very slow and mess up, but I was adding, and I looked up a video on how to add a new sheen into the, and I weaved them together, and I can continue to crochet. And we are weaved in each other's lives, and we have these, and these two sheens intersect, and sometimes they just intersect at a small little place, but then the work gets to continue. And what a blessing when I think about the old waste places, and that even if the Lord doesn't allow me to help build some things, that I'm being intersected with somebody else who's going to. And man, that's like our legacies, they just continue. Preacher Lockie is no longer here, yet his ministry continues on. Brother Adrian Rogers, I still listen to his messages. I still even get such a blessing, and he's been gone for, I don't know, I think he passed maybe in 2005 or somewhere through there. I can't even remember now what year it was, but made such an impact. I never even got to meet him, but yet through the resource of radio, I was able to hear him, and it was somebody that I listened to every day. I got in the car line when my kids were in school at 2:30, and that's when Brother Adrian Rogers would come on. And this was even after he passed. And he would come on, and I would listen to his messages, and I would have my Bible in my car, and I would even have my notebook in my Bible, and I would jot down some notes while I was waiting to pick up my kids. His ministry made a very large impact in my life, and he's gone, and he's still making an impact in my life. And I know that he makes an impact in millions of lives still today. And God is using us to build some old waste places because of what somebody who was faithful to the Lord. My Sunday school lesson today is about being faithful. Joash was faithful, and then all of a sudden a death happened. And then these new people were coming into his life and counseling him and leading him down the wrong road, and he was not faithful to the Lord anymore, and had been year after year after year after year. And I'm not perfect, and I mess up all the time, and I'm thinking, Lord, I could fall into that kind of trap at any time. Help me to be faithful. And I just feel like he's going to weave people constantly into my life, and then I'm going to be able to he's weaving my life into other people, and how he uses one another. And sometimes our intersections are just a little small little intersection to continue the work to go on. And then sometimes it's a big impact, and it's, and you're impacting somebody's life for years. I feel like, like at Laurel Hill, we were there for 8.5 years, and for 8.5 years, those people impacted my life in such a way that they're still in my life. They're still part of who I am, and I hope that I'm still part of who they are. And I think about all the mistakes that I make, and I pray, Lord, help them not to intermingle any of those mistakes, but only those things that you did, that you caused in my life, that you know you led and blessed. And I think about those things, and what a tremendous responsibility that we have to be careful. You're impacting. You don't have to bear a child to make a difference in a child's life. There is so many people, as I was being brought up, that impacted my life. Mary Davis, I had, I can't even think of her mom's name. It was a best friend that I had in middle school, and her mom made a tremendous impact in my life. And I know that woman prayed for me, and she sent me letters when I wasn't even living in North Carolina. When I was in Virginia, she would send me letters every once in a while, and she would never even know the impact that she had in my life. And our intersection was very brief, very, very brief, but I often will think about how she helped me in that season and that time. And I'm helping somebody and I don't even realize it, and you're helping somebody and you don't even realize it. And when you think that you're not making a difference, God is saying, the people that are of thee, that are produced out of thee, that you've made an impact, they are carrying on. They are continuing on, and they're even going to build some old waste places. They're even going to take some things that maybe aren't even being used anymore, and they're going to run with it. I think about my grandmother, Mamaw, and I want to learn how to quilt, and I'm going to start with like a rag quilt, and because that's what she did, and I want to take a little piece of her, and I want to continue with my generation, and I want to pass it on to the next generation. I want to teach my granddaughters how to do some of this stuff. I first got to learn how to do it. I'm not very good, but we all got to start somewhere, even if it's starting with stuff that you're not good at. And I think about how much that I lean on the Lord, and that I can't make it through a day without Him, and that anytime I get off track, it's when I've taken my eyes off of Him and I'm looking at my circumstances, or I'm looking at, challenges, or even, looking at, victories. Because everything can be a distraction, but I need to stay focused on the Lord. And then I've got this promise that if I stay focused on the Lord, that those that are of me, which seems shocking, it seems crazy, and I think of just my 4 children that are of me, they come out of my womb, but then I look past just my 4 children, and that there's grandchildren, there's Sunday school kids, there's, friends and neighbors and people that I don't even realize, but I'm making an impact, and I don't even realize it, because it's not me that's doing it, but it's God that's intersecting us. And sometimes our intersections are lengthy and long, and sometimes they're short, and sometimes they're way too short. And we know we didn't have, we feel like, Lord, I didn't have enough time. My friend Teresa Williams, who passed away this past year, our intersection was just for a few years. And she made such an impact in my life, and I wasn't done wanting her to make an impact in my life. But a piece of her continues on in me. She made a tremendous impact, even though our intersection was only a couple of years long. She made a tremendous impact in my life. And so I pray that whatever impact, that when God weaves me into somebody's life, even if it's just for a few months, even if it's just for a year, or if it's for 30 years, I pray that I take that responsibility seriously and pray and stay close to the Lord and keep my eyes focused on Him and realize that it's not me, but it's all to Him, all to the Lord, all to Him I owe. To God be the glory. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.